Happy 2026 everyone. Hopefully this will be an awesome year for a lot of you. Certainly from my side, we are starting off with quite a bit of a bang here with Columbina, and as the video title suggests, we're going to be talking about Kokomi and Columbina teams. From my perspective, Columbina is a fantastic match with Kokomi, especially given all of these lunar charge reactions. But before we get into all of that, the first thing that I noticed with Columbina when I looked at the model was that she's not as covered as you'd think. So immediately, my opinion of Columbina is that she is a 10 out of 10 character. So now you know how I rate the character. So, okay, that's the character review. We're all here for the combat, so let's get into that. And we're going to do that with a bit of a twist. So I've got a couple of teams lined up, and I'll show you these Spiral Abyss showcases a bit later on. But what you can see here in the background might be a bit unfamiliar. But effectively, we have a team DPS calculator in game. In other words, the damage per second that your team does, as well as the total damage over a given window, with a breakdown of each of the characters' contribution in your party. This is, for me, like incredible. And there are a couple of, I'll show you two different stages by different creators, but for me it's just amazing that we can finally use Miliastra Wonderland not just for some little party and gimmicky games, but for actual team building and diagnostics. This is what I think Genshin should have had like years ago, but finally we do have it, and I'm going to use it in a lot of the upcoming content. But what you'll notice just from this little bit of a static showcase, if you look there in the background, is that Kokomi does a non-negligible part of the team's damage, and this is something that I've always said as a Kokomi main. She does so much more than a lot of people give her credit for, especially in these heavy reaction-based teams. So certainly we can now finally get a proper scoreboard, and you can see there Kokomi did quite a bit of damage over this like 1 minute window, 1.6 million, which is kind of incredible. Now obviously Columbina and all the other characters are not as strong, so I do expect that the numbers will change, but the whole point is we can see it. And whenever there are different team suggestions, whenever other people give you team suggestions, you don't have to rely on spreadsheets or all of those sorts of things. You finally have the power yourself. So I just wanted to put this in because it is important to let people know about this, and it's also important to note that a lot of these things are work in progresses. These are things that the creators of these stages have also said themselves, so do understand that whilst I think the numbers themselves are accurate, a lot more features are going to come, like more AoE teams and more different boss gimmicks and mechanics and so on. In that sense, we can really test all of these teams like very, very thoroughly. I think this puts the power of theory crafting in the hands of the masses, and that to me really is the first time that I've gotten really excited for Miliastra Wonderland. Okay, so enough glazing, let's get into the different teams with Kokobina. So the first one is the classic Taser team, of course, with a bit of a not-cry twist. The Taser team is something that's always been traditionally associated as one of Kokomi's early teams. It's kind of fallen off because the DPS and the HP inflation just made it not as competitive, but because of the lunar reactions in Notcry, we now have a bit of a resurgence where these electro charge or Taser teams are a lot more powerful, and obviously Kokomi herself fits in very, very naturally to boost the team's health, to do AoE damage, and just to overall be that on-field driver where and when needed. So for me, this is a very, very comfy team to pilot. I forgot to mention Columbina is C0 and Effa is C0. They're not even fully built yet, and Kokomi is just a standard Kokomi that I've always had on this channel. But with the old characters of Kazuo and Kokomi, this is 1.1, this is 1.6 and a 2.1 characters. It's not that bad, and especially in AoE, the Taser team delivers as they should. I think it's very, very accessible to a lot of people, and if you had to go into the latest Spiral Abyss, although it's resetting in 2 days, certainly on this first floor you can easily finish this off in 1 minute 30. Given the amount of AoE and just the unfavorable cryo matchup, this is, I think, a very, very fun team. Certainly want to play if we have a lot of AoE content going forward. The next team is one that I think a lot of people haven't thought of, and that is a double hydro, double geo team with Kokomi and Columbina, obviously with Navia in it, and then Zhongli here is just standing in as a placeholder for the upcoming character Zabai, and she's obviously going to enable a lot more when it comes to the lunar crystallize reaction. And this is kind of a very, very fun team for me because you are constantly just rotating, but Kokomi's jellyfish is stationary, and Columbina has portable AoE hydro, so the combination of this gives you lots of field coverage with the application of hydro, and then Navia's elemental burst just hits the entire field. So that combination together with either a Zhongli or a Zabai is going to give you just so many cool reactions, and I think this for me was just so much fun to play. Yes, I think with the addition here of Zhongli it's not as strong as it's going to be, but certainly I just found that to be so cool. It's so unconventional, it's not what we are typically used to, but this definitely breathes in a lot of life into the various geo reactions, and having Kokomi being one of the enablers, and also in a certain sense being part way with like Navia, Kokomi being like a dual sub on-field DPS, I don't know, kind of weird configuration. It is really fun. Is it going to be the highest output in terms of DPS? No, but it certainly just gives you more optionality, and especially if you're someone that, like me, didn't quite buy into the Natlan kind of like meta, but loves the reaction type of meta we have with Notcry. This to me is just going to be so exciting, because more teams just means more ways of having fun. The next team is one which I think a lot of people kind of anticipated. What about a bit of a Nilou bloom here with Colombina? Look, I think in an AoE scenario like this, it's pretty powerful, but I wouldn't really bank on it, just for the pure fact that, well, the showcase here is a bit skewed because my Nilou is at C6, so that's just, and we've got such an overload on EM, it's not really going to do it justice. But the other thing is you're effectively trading the Dendro Core reaction for more Lunar Bloom reactions. So basically you'll have a surplus of Hydro Aura, but a kind of like a deficit of Dendro Aura, which means you're not going to generate Dendro Cores as efficiently, but the Lunar Bloom's going to make up for it. So overall, I don't know where this reaction is going to sit, but hey, it is another type of Needle Bloom team if you want to play it, although I do think with Constellations it's probably going to be better in any case. Right, and our last team is one that we kind of alluded to in the beginning of the video, and that is the Hyperbloom team here with an Etha and Loma. Look, it didn't feel as competitive for me, to be quite honest. Certainly you get a lot of the Lunar Charge and Lunar Bloom reactions, and it's enabled by Columbina. So theoretically, with the addition of Kokomi's Hydro and being able to heal the team and all of that, it should be strong, but I think in this AoE type of scenario, it wasn't as strong as I would have hoped it to be. So maybe if I had to make an assessment, something like 2 or 3 enemies with like a bit of like higher health pools, this might be very ideal. But certainly against lots and lots of enemies, this is not as competitive as the Nilou Bloom, or even in a certain sense like that Geo team. But regardless, it still is kind of strong, and I still feel like it's very funky because you're constantly rotating, constantly swapping, and that's definitely my playstyle. Reactions and constantly swapping, and then managing the auras of your team, the positioning with the enemies, it's just very good. But yeah, that is my assessment, or at least this is my take on the different Kokomi teams. Obviously, it's still day 1 with Columbina out, so there's still a lot of experimentation to do and lots of lessons to be learned, but let me know what you guys think, or if you've got any cool team suggestions down below. Alright, that's it from my side for today. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.